Hi folks, my name is Noel Charath. I'm from Rift.io, but I'm today here presenting OSM. Today morning, Francisco and Adrian and Andy went through some of the reasonings behind OSM and some of the key capabilities in R1. So the part that I'll be showcasing today will be related to package creation, in this case specifically VNF and NSD package creation, and some of the UI architecture. So I'll show you some screenshots. My plan was to actually see if I could show you an actual demo of onboarding, but the resolution doesn't seem to be aligning with the projector here, so I'm going to skip that. But I'll definitely have the screenshots, and I'll walk you through it and the process that's required. So the first section will focus on, I do have a clicker here, sorry. The first section will focus on onboarding of a VNF package. So Francisco early and Adrian, they both kind of touched on one of the process being onboarding of VNFs. And Francisco gave some pictures of building blocks with Legos and stuff like that. But so what I'll go through with OSM is the process to do it. So there are a couple of ways to do that. Francisco just went through installation of OSM R1 here. So I'll go through the creation of packages and there are the three ways that is related to it. Now, what is packages? So package is what you create to onboard a given VNF or a network service in this case. When you take a package, we talk about VNFD or VNF descriptor files, but a descriptor file by itself is not enough. If you think about it, the VNF, there's an image for the VNF. Maybe there's some icons, maybe there's some scripts that you need to run pre and post instantiation of the VNF. So a package, contains a lot of those information. I'll go through a couple of slides that will show you the actual contents of a package and what is mandatory and what is not mandatory per se. But descriptor is one of the key mandatory items. So I'll show you that part. Package also helps you to provide an interface for one-stop, one-click onboarding. There's the given package for OSM. There are some mandatory structures identified, and I'll show you the structure in the next slide. So the first package is the VNF package. The VNF package contains, it's a tar.gc file. Once the package is created, it becomes a tar.gc file, and the tar.gc file is used to upload or onboard. But the package contains a checksum file. The checksum file is really used to make sure the given file has not been tampered with, right? It's really for the security part of it. There's a README, which is really not mandatory. There's a descriptor file, which is in YAML format. That particular file is mandatory, obviously, and we'll go through the descriptor contents a little bit here in a second. Then there are charms. I think right after my session, Mark will be talking about some of his favorite topics. There are cloud-native scripts that you can add to it. This will help when you're onboarding or instantiating the given VM for a VNF, the cloud-native functions that needs to be run. Icons, if you want to display your given VNFD with a specific icon on the composer, the icon buttons are there. Images specifically refer to the actual VNF image. You do have two choices. Either you can embed the image with the package, which probably will make the package pretty big, or you can give the path to where the package can be downloaded. In most of the cases, the Vim would already have the image, and the idea is that you give the path or the name of the image in here. And then scripts. The idea here is it's slightly different from cloud-native part. If there are day 0, day 1 configuration scripts that are required for you to run with this particular VNF, whether it's maybe base configuration once VNF is up and running, those can be added here as well. Similarly, for the network service, NSD, there's a very similar package, and you can see the contents are almost identical. The NSD YAML file is important as it kind of correlates the entire networking service. So it includes all the VNFDs, the VLDs components to create that particular service as well. So the one difference that you will see from the previous package here is the NSConfig component. And I'll kind of show you how to onboard these, in the next couple of slides. So let me just capture again. As part of the onboarding process for using the OSM release software, release 1 here, there are 2 key packages. There is a VNFD descriptor package and a NSD descriptor package. All right, so there are 3 ways to onboard them or create a package and get them onboarded. You can use a web-based utility form. One of the idea here was that the operators can simply give access to a web-based form to their vendors or VNF vendors and let them log in and be able to create a basic VNFD descriptor package that they can then play with. So that was a simple idea. So we have created a very simple form or web-based form that you can access and create a very basic VNFD package from there. The second part is CLI tool. The CLI tool, once you install OSM Release 1, you have access to all these parts. You have to update the descriptor utility there, but you get access to creating a package from CLI. And then the third part is to use the UI itself. All right, so the first methodology to use is a web-based package generator. The link is given on the top, but end of the day, the idea here is we will actually create a link under ETSI portal itself, but you are welcome to play with it and be able to create basic VNFD packages. The information requested is also very minimal. Typically you have to give it a name, the vCPU memory hard disk count, where the image is going to be stored, and it gives you the ability to create a package. So it just generates a very, very basic package for a very basic VNF. So it's extremely useful. As I mentioned earlier, a given package is a tar.gc file. So it is a compressed file with specific checksum information in it and specific descriptor files in it. But this actually helps, the web-based utility actually helps you to get a very basic VNFD going on. And then you can edit it, make a lot of modifications to take it to the next level. Obviously, that's the pros. The con here is that it only supports very basic VNFs, very basic information within that. Francisco earlier talked about supporting, and Adrian also mentioned the same thing, supporting EPA attributes and a bunch of other things. They're all, you won't see them here. But what you get is a package creator. You can then edit them to add a bunch of those information in it, but at least you get started. All right, so the second process is to use the CLI-based utility that's there. And some of the documentation that I think Adrian showed earlier, Francisco showed earlier, there was a kind of printed outside. There's a PDF available on the website too, on the ETSI website, has some of information related to how to go about this process. All right, so this is part of R1. You can use the basic package that you created based on the web that I showed earlier. But in this case, you can also generate the NSDs. Previously, it was just VNFD that you create from the web-based form. But now you can also create NSD with this. The use case here is, again, you have a little bit more flexibility now. With the web-based form, it's just very basic stuff. There's not much edit that you can do in per se. But with the CLI-based tool, you're able to add the icons, you're able to add the scripts, you're able to add the image information, you're able to edit the YAML file and add more information into a descriptor, and then get the VNFD or the NSD created. So there are definitely more advantages and uses to this particular methodology. The install process is given here. I wasn't going to take you through the install process per se, but I was going to show you actual generation of a utility if my laptop was able to be working here. But I do have screenshots, so I'll go through the screenshots for the time being. If anyone is interested to see this actually in action, I'll be available here, or I'll be in one of our booths here. either on the ETSI booth or in Ruftai booth. So definitely stop by anytime, and I'll actually take you through the real process itself. But once you install the descriptor package, then you get access to the script called generator descriptor package script. You go in there and you can obviously do -help to get some information related to what are the actual commands. So I know this is hard to read, so let me just click on to the next one. This specific CLI gives you information related to the options for this particular script. Oh, I do have a laser. All right, so the one thing that you see here, -NSD, by default, if you don't select -NSD, you get a VNFD descriptor package created. But if you do enable -NSD, then it also creates an NSD package along with it. The idea is that you, again, create a very basic descriptor. You give a vCPU information, amount of memory, storage, the image, in this case, the path of the image, and where you want to store this particular descriptor file, or where you want to get this descriptor file created. Once that is created, you can go there and edit it and do a lot more changes and then follow the same process. Okay, so here's an actual example of this particular command being used. AC is to actually get the directories created, NSD to make sure the NSD file is created as well. In this particular example, we're using 4 vCPU, 2 gig memory, 20 gig storage, and we have an image file name with the directory of where the image is and the directory where you want to get the specific package created. So it might be pretty hard to see here, but in the example that you see here is that the package has been created. That's the first line here. And I'm actually going into the directory and editing the descriptor file that's inside that particular directory where the package got created. So if I look at the descriptor file that just got created, it has some of the basic information that you can see here given, and you can see the VM flavor information given here. Some of the image file name, the image name itself given here, etc. And the idea is that you should be able to edit this particular YAML file and update it with a lot more information if you want to have a proper descriptor creator for a given VNFD. All right, so the next part here is it shows once you have made modifications to the given YAML file with more updates, then you want to regenerate that particular package so that the checksum file is updated, the entire directory structure is updated. I mentioned earlier that some of the components of the package are the icons, the scripts, the charms. All those things are not created by default. Once you create this directory, then you have to follow the process again to manually put the icons, manually put the scripts, all that kind of stuff. Once that process is done, you can run the generate script package command again with -t, and this will recompile and recreate the package for you. And in this case, you'll have to do it twice, one for the VNFD package and one for the NSD package. So at this point, you actually have a VNFD package that has more information than just the VM flavor information. It has the scripts, it has the icons, it has the Juju charms required, etc. All right. This shows the actual output of the package that gets created with this particular script. You can see some of the directories that are embedded within that particular tar.gc file. Basically, it has the same structure that I showed earlier. You see the image directory, the script directory, the icons, etc. All of them here. But you get a proper package that's created that you can use at that point. All right, so from a usability standpoint, it's again pretty easy and simple to create basic VNFs. But it does more than the web-based utility. It now allows you to edit and update some of the key things required in terms of icons, in terms of scripts, in terms of charms, all that kind of stuff can be added in, so it gives you that particular support model. And it's easy to use. The template is pretty basic. It's pretty easy to use. Now, in terms of creating a complicated VNFD, it's still not the best option. because this requires you to learn all the syntax and semantics and attributes to get a complicated VNF created on a YAML. So for that, we'll go to the next process. All right, this takes us to the third method to creating a package. This is using the composer, the UI component of it. When you log in, once you have installed OSM R1, you connect to your to the UI and you log in with your credentials. You get all these specific menus on top. You click on catalog. Catalog will take you to the composer screen. The composer screen on the left side, there are a bunch of icons. These help you if you already have created a package in your directory, or if you have archived, or if you have a pre-compiled or pre-created package, you can use some of these icons to upload from the UI directly. Or you have a way to create brand new ones by clicking on the plus button. You can create a brand new VNFD, create a brand new NSD. And once you've created it, you will see in one of these tabs, whether it's a VNFD, you'll come up here, or if it's an NSD, you'll come under the NSD tab as well. And you will see the middle portion is where it's kind of the service composer part, where you can actually compose from a graphical standpoint the actual VNFD parts. So at the top, you have the VNFD construct name. Then you have each of the kind of icons representing a VDU, or in this case, a VM. So if you have a multi-VM VNF, this allows you to create a true multi-VM VNFD for a given VNF. You can see some of the templates on top here. If you want to add a VDU, or if the given VNF requires, let's say, 3 to 4 or 5 VMs, then you can click on Add a VDU. It'll pop up a similar icon here. You enter the information related to the VM flavor, and there are a bunch of other information as well. It's not just the VM flavor info itself, but EPA information, some of the other things that you will see coming up, some of the script information. They all can be populated on the form that kind of becomes active on the right side. So depending upon which component that you select, the form kind of changes to show the specific attributes that's pertaining to that particular component. But again, the idea is that you're able to do virtual links, internal virtual links, VDUs, and you can see, there are a bunch of, these are all templates that are kind of created so that you can drag and drop and create some basic VNFD packages here. Once you've created the overall package, you've edited all the information required for the VNFD. You can click on onboard to save that particular VNFD. So at that point, you actually have a saved VNFD here. You're able to export them. If you want to store it on your laptop, you're able to export them out, etc. And you're also able to click on the YAML viewer if you want to verify the entire YAML format that has been created based on what you did on the composer part. All right, so from a composer standpoint, it's very easy to use. And it's not just for simple VNF. You can actually create a proper complicated VNFD in this case. One of the negative part that's not supported yet, but hopefully in the next release will be, is the actual true package creation part. So this creates a proper VNFD, but the creation and storing of the icons and scripts are not supported from the UI directly right now. But that's coming in. For that particular part, you will again have to go back and do the generate of the package from the CLI. So there are some good things, but there's still some items that are still missing, or some gaps, I would say, that probably, hopefully, Adrian and the whole the end user advisory group will work together to get it moving. So I will leave it at that. Okay, so far what we have done is talk about creating of a VNFD or NSD package. But that by itself, the job is not done. Now you have to onboard the package onto either the UI. So before you do an actual instantiation of the network service, you obviously want to onboard them. So we'll go through some of the steps to get there as well. Again, onboarding of the package can be done via CLI, or it can be done via the UI as well. So we'll go through both this process very quickly. In order to get the top part that shows here to get the SO code shows you how to get some of the components of the OSM release 1 installed. Once you have that installed, you do get a script to onboard the given package. If you have the full OSM R1 installed, the directory kind of changes a little bit, but it's the same script that you will be able to access. Onboarding a package here purely means that you're able to then completely onboard it onto the composer, and so that it's the final step before you want to instantiate a given package. So in this case, using the script, you're able to give the IP address of the launchpad. Earlier, I showed you the composer view, the graphical interface. It's also called launchpad. So you can give the IP address of that specific launchpad. You can give the name of the package. And then if you have multiple packages to onboard, you can tag them together and have multiple packages onboard at the same time by repeating -u. And they get all onboarded onto the UI. So if you go back to the UI on the launchpad, you will actually see them completely onboarded there. If it was empty before, you'll now see all the packages being there. We didn't touch base on REST interface. Earlier, there was a question related to netconf. Was netconf going to be supported at some point? And I think Adrian responded to that part. But all the things that you see here on the UI, they're all supported from a REST API perspective as well. Everything that you see here can be done through REST interface. Here's an actual example of a package onboarding given here. So in this case, it's running the script, giving the IP address of the launchpad, the package name, and the package where it's going to be created, and the package, the second package. The two packages here, the VNFD and the NSD, they both get onboarded. All right, once you run the scripts, you will get a succeeded message. Basically, you will see a succeeded message for each of the package that gets onboarded. I was going to see if I could show you this in live action, but since I'm not able to connect, I won't be able to show it. I'll be here afterwards. If anyone wants to go through this whole process using a real R1 install, I have it on my laptop. I can actually show it to you, take you through this process. So once you've done the onboarding, before you do that, typically this would be empty. This whole part would be empty. But once you run the script command, what you will see here is you will see this particular VNFD being shown here as being onboarded on the launchpad. So once it's onboarded, then you can trigger the instantiation of it. So now you start the overall process of the lifecycle management piece, or the instantiation of the network service piece. Again, to instantiate, there are two ways to do it. You can do it through CLI, and so there is a command given here. And now this one, the preferred method is to use the UI itself. Why? There's a couple of information that if you really want to do a CLI-based instantiation, you need to get the NSD ID, which means you need to open up the NSD descriptor file, get the ID, and then run this particular command here. The data center refers to the actual RO. In this case, it's OpenVIM connectivity. So we're not going through the actual install and integration process of the R1, at least not in my session. But when you go through the actual UI, one of the things that you will have to do is to configure the OpenVIM credentials, or the RO OpenMANO or credentials, or the RO credentials, and at that point it will identify that as a data center name. So that kind of completes just the package creation and onboarding of the tools itself. I'll take you through some of the UI changes that we did for R1. That'll be next. Release 1 just got released last week. And as Francisco mentioned and Adrian mentioned, they were ahead of time, so which is great. So I'll take you through some of the changes between R0 and R1. One of the biggest change was the whole pluggable architecture based on plugins. So many of the key components like account management, catalog management, lifecycle management, they're all kind of created as plugins in R1. Some of the key changes here. From a framework standpoint, previously on release 0, we do have REST API, support WebSockets, UI, etc. But they're all in different ports. So several ports to get each of those components, hit and used. That has been completely changed to cut down that kind of clutter and complexity into two specific ports. That's one of the big changes. We have also added support for WebSockets and secure WebSockets in release 1. And the APIs have been moved into respective plugins. So this particular part is kind of important, even though it's a small statement here. It's kind of important because all the plugin architecture that's required for R1, is taking shape in the release 1 rather than what it was in release 0. All right, so we had a total of 4 plugins in release 0 that you see here on the left side. In release 1, that has been updated to about 7. These are some of, when you saw the UI, and I'll show you some more screenshots coming up. On the top, you'll see a bunch of menus, and some of the menus that you'll see now are accounts, config, and logging, but they're all plugins. The idea was that you can keep adding plugins, and I'm sure Adrian and Francisco invited other folks to start contributing if you're willing to contribute and add plugins, right? Whether it was an SDN plugin, whatnot. But at the end of the day, R1 has 7 plugins, and these are 3 key plugins that were added with this one. The other thing that was added was a test framework. So previously we didn't have any test framework on release 0, but release 1 allows you to run a framework where you can test these server-side modules. So besides plugins, there are a bunch of modules that constitute the entire UI. So you do have the ability to run a test framework and test out the module so that when you make changes, you're able to test it and kind of get a feedback right away. So there are about 4 server component test cases that have been added that will run automatically when you run the test framework. The other part is the configuration options through REST API. Something that wasn't there previously. The whole configuration option through REST API was not supported. It was through the UI directly, but now you actually have ability to do REST API-based calls to do that. All right, from a UI perspective, the plugins that I was talking about, at least access to the plugins are some of the menus that you saw on the top. But one of the key things was the YAML display. And I think Adrian went through this a little bit as well. We can take in descriptor files in different formats. So we can consume a descriptor file in XML format, in YAML, or JSON. But when we display the actual file format, it will be in a YAML, and you will see something similar. So you see about 3 VNFs here with multiple virtual link descriptors and a corresponding YAML file here. Another change was done in release 1. Earlier in release 0, some of the way these icons or the constructs were shown kind of caused a little bit of confusion. So some additional information has been added. You will see a bar on top that showcases whether it's a VNFD or an NSD to differentiate between an NSD and a VNFD. The color combination relation to VNF, VDU, VLDs, there are different colors used to now identify those, as well as the icon type, right? So, three key changes done in release 1 to make sure you are able to differentiate between a VNF, NSD, VNFD, or a VLD. Because when you do editing of these each components, you don't want to be confused with either. Here's an example of the test framework being run. Another change that was done for release 1, in one of the UI, once the service is up and running, there is this concept of service primitives. So you're able to run scripts post-service instantiation. And when you run those scripts, you used to get some kind of status, but not really much informative in R0. So in R1, a bunch more information has been added. Now you get timestamp on how much time has been gone since the particular job has been instantiated or started. You also get some of the parameters. Obviously, you won't see this is just an example of a password that's typed in, but you will get the parameters that were run through that particular script. So you can identify exactly what script was run, what it was for, etc. And if there is an error, then you can get some error status as well in detail on why that particular job errored out. There's also 2 buttons here that you see is red. They typically turn green if the job was successful. All right, another component added, in release 0, there was support for logging, but it wasn't supporting any kind of filter methodology. It wasn't supporting any ways to kind of point to a specific log viewer, etc. So what was done in R1, now you do have the capability to filter out the logs that are coming in. And then you're able to get it displayed on a given analyzer. In this case, you see a log analyzer as an example, but the idea is that you should be able to use any log viewer that you want to point to and be able to get it displayed. But this whole plugin component was added in release 1. All right, moving forward, some of the other components in the UI. Once you instantiate the service, there are a couple of other components that are added that are not there in R0. Virtual links. So previously, we never displayed virtual link information. You will see the virtual links in the composer. You will see the virtual links in the catalog, and you can see what they are right before instantiation. But now we are showing the virtual links once the service is deployed. And you see some of the information related to the virtual links on the right side as well. Now, outside of that, there's one more capability added. Previously, it was impossible to do any changes to a running service. But now you can actually create a virtual link on a running service. So this allows you to create an external virtual link on a running service. So that particular capability has been added as well on release 1. And you can click on create virtual link, add the information related to that particular virtual link. And in this case, it could be an existing network information that's already pre-created in your Vim. You can point to that and get that created. All right, besides that, on the instantiation part, previously we had one page to do the instantiation where you select the NSD that was onboarded, you kind of verify what's part of the key components of that particular descriptor file, and then you can instantiate. Now you see a bunch more functionalities in there. One of the key things that both Adrian and Francisco talked about earlier was support for multi-Vim, support for multi-site, etc. So now when you do the instantiation, you have the capability to select where each of the given VNF has to be placed. So when you create a network service, the idea is that a service is formed based on multiple VNFs coming together, forming a use case that becomes a network service. So if you have a multi-VNF network service, and you want to have those VNFs launched, maybe one of them in one specific Vim, another one in a complete different Vim, maybe if it's of the same type, maybe a different type, but you now have the capability to select on a per VNF basis where you want to launch that particular VNF. So you can actually create a network service that's launched across multiple Vim or multiple sites. You also get additional information that you can input, specifically IP parameters for the virtual links while instantiation. So these are all information that you can add during the instantiation or right before the instantiation time. Another thing, previously in release 0, if you needed to go and look at the actual console of a given VM, there wasn't an easy step to go directly from the UI or the Launchpad. We have added additional information. There are multiple ways to get to it. You are able to now go directly into the VM console of a given VNF once it's launched. So you can go it through viewport, which is looking at the actual launch instance, or you can go it outside of the viewport and connect to the VM console. Another feature created in release 1, support for SSH Key Pairs. You may have seen if you manually try to launch a given VNF or a VM for a VNF, there are options to do, create a SSH key or add an SSH key pair for it. You have the capability now to create a new key and get it added as part of the given VM. So that particular component has been added in this particular release 1 as well. I talked about this briefly earlier, but this kind of shows the capability to run VNFs across, or multiple VNFs across multiple controllers or multiple VIMs. So, the key feature here talked about multi-site network service. Okay. In release 0, the configuration from an account perspective was very differently managed and different layouts and stuff like that. So in release 1, we have taken a completely different approach. You can see OpenMANO as a complete different component under config or RO config component. So now you're able to distinguish between an RO config versus a Vim specific config. So that part has been added, and you're able to get that information updated here as well. Also added as part of release 1, when you get to the instantiation page, previously you would see a small information related to the descriptor file, but purely focused on the image flavor or the VM flavor and EPA if any EPAs were enabled. But now you also get details related to the VLDs that are part of the component, the networking constructs or anything else that is part of that particular descriptor file added as well. This shows some of the information related to, let me go back quickly. So in the previous page, the overall workflow for instantiation has been broken down into 2 parts now. Previously it was just one screen. You just look at it and instantiate directly. Now you are able to click on next, and which takes you to the next page, and now you go through the actual information related to the instantiation parameters. This is where you can provide maybe the IP address if you have a specific virtual link, or the Vim or specific site where you want to launch some of the VNFs. So you can select all those on the next screen and then get it launched. So those are kind of my side of the slides, but my focus was purely showing you the process to create packages, process to onboard packages, and some of the key changes in R1 that just got released last week. So let me stop there and see if there are any questions. Yes. That's the idea. So the idea is that so his question is, can you manage multiple instances of controllers of OpenStack per se? I mean, that's really the idea, right? And one of the demos that were done in MWC was to showcase 3 controllers with services launched. But in that case, it was 3 separate services launched. Now the functionality is that you're able to launch one service across multiple controllers or multiple sites. Correct. So you're talking about the WAN orchestration between the sites. So this doesn't involve WAN orchestration between the sites per se. The assumption is that there is connectivity and the WAN orchestration is already done between the controllers. Francisco, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, essentially that is that your assumption is that the new underlay connections are not created on the fly. You assume that there are some underlay connections already available, and then you can play with either the routing rules or using them as layer 2 connections. Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the logging capability and what your plans are to elaborate that?
Yeah. So there are a bunch of logs available right now from a UI perspective that gets spewed out into a specific file while the service is running. Those logs can be ported out and be viewed through any kind of external log viewer, right? And the capability that you have right now is to be able to filter the specific message that you want to see in terms of whether it's criticality or what kind of process within it, and just look at that particular part. Anything beyond that has to be coming up in next releases, which I don't think the content of release 2 has been fully baked yet. But what you get today is all the logs that you get that gets that gets to either send to sys log and whatnot can also be viewed directly on the UI. And in order to view that, there's a log analyzer package that is when you install OSM R1, log analyzer also gets installed now. And when you click on this go button, basically what you have selected here to be displayed gets displayed in that log analyzer package, on the next page. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.